Alfonso, it's great to have you on the show here.
Glad to be here.
Welcome everyone to the Casually Profound series on the Sci podcast. Here with my guest, conversation partner Alphonso Meadows in the gathering spot in beautiful Midtown Atlanta. So appreciate you taking the time out of your day to have a casually profound conversation.
Absolutely. I think I've been thinking just about that title for the last couple of weeks. I love it. It's just casually profound. So I'm here for it. It's an honor to be here and to speak with you and share. So thanks for having me.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to start off with anything that you're grateful for.
Man, so I've been trying to keep a gratitude journal because I've heard kind of how that can kind of help set your day, center your day. And so of all days, I didn't do it today. But I can always think of things that I'm grateful for. I think in this moment, I'm really grateful for having the activity of my limbs and eyesight and ability to actually bring myself to this place. And I say that comes off the back of taking my mom to the doctor this morning. She's in good health now, but just sometimes I think we take that for granted, like just the everyday, like if you didn't have a thumb, like, do you know how much more difficult things would be, right? And so I think just being with her this morning, it makes me really grateful for just like the activity of my limbs and just the beat of my heart, you know what I mean? Like the ability to actually be able to see, to bathe myself, to care for myself. Like, I mean, that's more than one, but I think, if anything, I think I'm just grateful for that today in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's definitely one of the things that I think most people take for granted, me included.
Yeah.
And we always see everyone who's outside of having those things that we can be grateful for as not normal.
Yeah.
And so I think it's always good to remind ourselves of those basic aspects of being human. But for some people, it's not.
It's not. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think I'm grateful for, knock on wood, having a functional car. That's
any wood around here?
Yeah, yeah. I was like, knock on wood here. Yeah, I think that looks like wood. Yeah. I think, like being able to drive from Charlotte to Atlanta.
Yeah.
To do this and not have to think about we're like taking a Greyhound or Megabus.
Yeah.
Coming down here or take the train or
just
being able to be flexible. I'll meet you out with coffee, with these other people, or I'll meet some people on the way here.
Absolutely.
Whatever it is, or even within the city, not even like intracity.
Yeah.
Or intercity, but intracity. It's let's meet up with this, going to events.
Yeah.
Like just being grateful for having that level of movement and mobility, whether on a human level, individual level, or on a, me with a vehicle level.
Yeah. We take that for granted sometimes too, don't we?
Yeah.
We're so used to them, but
I think so. And people who don't have don't have access to public transit or don't have a vehicle, it's like, okay, life becomes that much tougher, right?
Yeah.
So definitely grateful for having a reliable car so far.
Absolutely.
So that's the. Hopefully I can stay that way.
Yeah. As of today, right?
Yes.
In this moment, it's what you have. Yeah.
Exactly.
Likewise. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I would love to do a quick visualization exercise.
Awesome.
On just having an amazing conversation.
Okay.
So whenever we're ready, we can center ourselves and get comfortable.
Okay.
And close our eyes. And become centered and fully present in the current moment. Taking a few deep breaths in and out. Relaxing everything from the top of our head to our neck, shoulders, torso, hips, knees, feet and toes. Just feeling fully relaxed. And from this space, let's imagine having an amazing conversation with game-changing ideas thrown around, deep insights formed, and a level of understanding of ourselves and each other that wasn't there before. A truly creative experience. And soak in this moment for a quick second. And when we're ready, we can come back to the present moment, slowly open our eyes, and come back to the gathering spot.
Nice.
Yeah, so just like calming down and being present and centered.
Yeah.
So first question I want to ask Alphonso is, who do others think Alphonso Meadows is?
I would say others think that Alphonso Meadows is passionate. He is a creative. He's a father, speaker. I would say they think that he is hopefully engaging. Also complicated. Complicated. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes you say complicated?
Well, because I am. I definitely think we all have layers, you know. But for me and within me, there's definitely, I'm very multifaceted in terms of just kind of like how I show up every day and some of the things that I do on a daily basis. Like my sisters, they'll say like, well, the running joke with my family, my mom, dad, and my sisters, they'll be like, what is Alphonso doing now? Like, you know, like he's what else has he added to the plate? And I think that's because of, I think just in terms of how I approach life, how I think, just the various tasks that I, you know, organize and manage throughout the day. I think, and just how I present myself in terms of personality, I think some people may consider that a bit complicated. Sometimes, I don't know if I say hard to understand, but it's like I said, it's a lot of, if I could do a visual, I think of like a lot of not only moving parts, but a lot of spinning plates, maybe kind of, you know, in terms of just all of the things that I think I am. I've never been like just like do one thing, think one way, behave in one kind of segment. I've always been like multifaceted, like in this, that, and the other. So some people consider that to be complicated.
Love that. It's
yeah.
What are those spinning plates in your life currently, or what have they been in the past?
Yeah, a little bit in the past. I mean, I spent a while. The first part of my probably adult life in ministry. So like spinning that plate of ministry and public speaking and giving a lot of my life and time and energy when I was raising my family to ministry and then raising a family. I was in corporate America as a program project manager, then managing project managers for 15 years. And then I'm a singer. So I was doing like, you know, writing and recording and singing with groups and that kind of thing, and had my own group and all at the same time. So I think that was a little bit in the past. Now it's kind of similar in terms of just my entrepreneurial side. I have 2 businesses that I'm running. Also, I'm helping to manage a restaurant. I have a merchandise line. We have a payroll company with my co-founder. And then I'm working right now on I don't know if you're familiar with Louise Hay.
Yeah.
Okay. So she has this audio that's called 101 Power Thoughts. So I'm doing a spinoff on that right now, recording that to be able just to make available for people. It's been very helpful to me. So I want to extend that and give it to other people. So like all of that. And then at the same time, consistently trying to become better, a better me, you know, and that can be a lot, you know, I think. So those are some of the, I'm trying to maintain friendships and family. I have an adult son, as he's transitioning into adulthood and that kind of thing. So those are like some of the plates I just continue to spin, or I try to manage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear. So I love creating, like connecting the dots.
Yeah.
Between two seemingly random things.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of what creativity is.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear, is there anything in the music singing industry that you were in and that you learned that then applies to another aspect of your life right now?
Absolutely. First thing that came to mind was being present. So what I noticed whenever I'm either singing or I play a little bit of piano, or if I'm writing, or if I'm in a group setting with like others that are I'm singing with, etc., I am right there. Or if I'm teaching as well, if I'm so there. And I've noticed on the musical side of the house, or creative, and that part of my creativity, whenever I start getting too much, or in my head too much, or starting to overthink rather, then I tend to lose flow, right? So like maybe I can't seem to think of the next lyrics, or if I'm overthinking when I'm singing, then it's like, oh, put the vibrato here, put the, you know, crescendo here. No, don't do that. Like, you know, and when you're doing all of that, then it's like, oh, then I'm not in the moment. And then when I hear it and I play it back, it's like, I can tell the difference in terms of how tone and how things are written in the flow of things. If, oh, I was not in the moment there. And so I apply that to like in business as well, particularly with managing people, because I think what I've learned from the musical aspect of myself and being present, it also is important when you're managing people that you're present as well. Because, you know, I've heard time and time again, like, you know, business and personal completely different. It doesn't matter how you feel, just get the job done, etc. Bunch of crap, okay? How someone feels matters. And when you're present, you can kind of start to discern and understand kind of exactly through body language, right? Through eye contact, through how they say something to me or don't, or right, or what they're not saying. I can manage better from that place, right? And not also being so concerned with the bottom line that I forget that, well, like my podcast that I have called Win the Day. Well, I can be so concerned about the bottom line, which you got to be concerned in business about that as well. But if I'm so concerned about that and I'm not focused on the present, then I got to win today. And I can't win the day without being present with whoever I'm managing or whatever task I'm doing. So to answer your question, I think from a musical perspective, just kind of like I've learned how important it is, although challenging, to have that balance of being present, but also forecasting and that kind of thing. So
yeah. I mean, I've also resonate with the feelings piece of it. I've definitely leaned more into how I feel before taking an action, while I'm taking an action. And it can be frowned upon sometimes to use but to lean more into your feelings in a business setting, where it's like, hey, where are the numbers? Where's the data?
Absolutely.
And I think you need both.
You do.
You do. Right? And the numbers may guide the intuition.
Absolutely.
Or vice versa, right? But yeah, I've definitely seen that play out, and I feel like you can do that on an individual level, and I think it's easier to do that at an individual level. The tough piece may be, all right, I'm working in a 5,000 employee company or a 100,000 employee company. How do I then leverage my intuition or the feelings to guide me in what I'm doing, right? If I need buy-in from other people, if the project impacts all these other stakeholders, right? I guess, have you seen that play out in your career or your life?
I have. I think because, again, I worked for, up until the last year of my life, I've been working pretty much for Fortune 500 companies until I went the entrepreneurial journey full time. But what I've learned in that, even rather it's organization of 10 or an organization of 10,000, your leadership matters. So if I have an organization of 10,000, then I need to make sure that the leaders that I have are not only thought leaders, but are also leaders that lead by intuition, right? And understand the people aspect of any, corporation or any task. Like, that's how it trickles down through the organization, is like the leadership. And I've seen time and time again, Sai, how, and I've even been at fault of this, of how because the leadership sets the tone, right? So I've been in organizations where I'm like, oh man, I love it. I love working here, right? Not only do I enjoy the task, but I just love the environment. I love who I'm reporting to. I love the vibe in here. And every time I get that feeling, or that experience rather, I like to use that term better, because sometimes feeling can have, sometimes have a negative connotation, particularly in business. So in a business setting, I use experience more, because it's like, I think it's more socially acceptable. But anytime I have that type of experience, I've now recognized that it's been leadership, because they believe in conscious leadership. They believed in servant leadership. They believed in, and the numbers were always either exceeding, most times, but it's typically been leadership, and that's how it trickled down. And I've also been in roles where I've enjoyed the task, but coming to the environment, or even working from home and having to who I reported to, a lot of the politics that weren't managed well, it was like, I enjoyed the task, but I can't stay here because of that. But again, it started in leadership. So to answer your question, from my experience, the larger the organization, it's gargantuan that you have the right leaders in there. Who has your heart? When the Chick-fil-A, Kathy, he was the founder of Chick-fil-A.
I know you're talking about. Yeah.
But I remember going on an interview there, because a good friend of mine worked, and I remember, oh man, the experience. So from the moment I got to the grounds at Chick-fil-A, right here, right in Atlanta, I didn't know what I was about to step into. So I first of all, I come into the grounds. The grounds are immaculately manicured. It's a beautiful sight to drive into it. I get into the foyer. The secretaries there, they seem happy. I go through, they take me on a tour to the kitchen. They have a daycare in there for the employees. I go all the way up. Kathy has his doors open. At the time, he's passed now, but he has his doors wide open. That was kind of his thing. Like, and you literally could just go up to his office, and if he wasn't there, talk to a secretary, and she'd give him a message, and he'd get back to I'll call you back up. Even into the bathroom with the janitors that I met. When I left that experience, I had never been to an organization where it seemed everyone I met wanted to be there. And of course, I didn't meet everyone, so I'm sure there's some people there that don't, didn't want to be there. But my point was, for me, having never been in that environment, or that establishment, that organization, I left thinking, wow, they're not pulling the wool over my eyes. Everyone that I met at least 40, 50 people. Everyone seemed they wanted to be there. And that has a lot to do with everything, in my opinion, to do with the leadership.
And that literally the open door policy.
Literally, that was his thing, right? So he was like doing it figuratively and literally, right? Like it's a sign too, right? That says, hey, I'm not that I'm not one of you all. Like, if there's no you, there's no me. So, even though I'm the, owner and founder of this multi-billion-dollar establishment, I don't know what their numbers are now, but hey, you can still come to talk to me. What's going on? Let me know, right? And you could see that type of attitude exemplified in all his leadership. You could just see it, right? And I thought, wow, that's why.
Yeah. It's like, what did they say? My pleasure.
Yes, my pleasure.
At the end of
absolutely at the end of your order. Yeah, and they're trained that way. My pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was in Atlanta last year, I went to a conference that actually had one of the employees from Chick-fil-A within their customer service team. Like, so he was the person, or he was part of the team that trained all the,
wow.
like he would go around the fields to all the stores
And do the
and
training.
would train either the store owners or the actual employees themselves
Uh,
of like, hey, here's how you do it. Here's what you say. Here's how you conduct yourself. And he was talking about all these different things, and he would show videos of Kathy
Oh, okay.
and you know, talk about his experiences with him as well as with all the stores. And like you said, it's the immaculate customer experience, whether
Yes.
it's an interaction or the bathrooms, the
Absolutely.
floor,
Absolutely.
whatever you see.
Absolutely.
It's a 5-star experience.
Yes. Which would make so much sense because I'm in the corporate headquarters, right, where all the leadership sits, right, and is everyone who's in leadership for Chick-fil-A works at this corporate headquarters. So if it's like that there, that's why we're getting that experience at the local Chick-fil-A down the street. That's why we're getting that experience, because it didn't miss a beat in terms of what I felt going in there for an interview.
Right.
Right. You know, so again, it's leadership has, and that's not only from a corporation, but in your home, I think, in your friendships, and like as a father, all of that. Like leadership is so important. It really is.
What would you say like is an underrated aspect of leadership?
That's a good question. An underrated aspect of leadership, I would say one of the underrated aspects, I think, would be the power that leaders have to influence change. And I don't know if and I've heard that said, but it hasn't been consistent in my experience. So I don't know if leaders really understand the power that you have to influence change, right? Just by tone of voice, by, you know, how something is said, you know, how you interact with whoever is reporting to you, you know, your competence, you know, sharing your competence, training, you know, those underneath you, you know, like, I think all of that, I think sometimes goes under, it's not as recognized to from a leadership perspective that, hey, rather you are manager or dishwasher, like that doesn't mean you can't be a leader. You know what I'm saying? A leader influences change, period. Because I know many who have titles and don't do that. You know what I'm saying? They have the title and the money and the resources and all of that, but you're not influencing any change. And if somebody's doing something because of your title, you're not influencing change, right? Because I know that this is my livelihood and you can pull you're signing my check, so I'm going to do it because of that. That's not leadership to me. And so to answer your question, I think it's under valued, and I don't think it's recognized enough. The reason why leadership is so powerful, because leadership has the power to influence change and to drive whatever your motive or goal is for that organization or business or family. You as a leader have the power to do that. I don't know if that's, you know, widely really understood. It's said in theory, but I don't know if we really believe that and understand that power.
Would you say that the power to influence or influence change, some combination thereof is your definition of leadership, or how would you define leadership?
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would define it the power to influence, right? And so, and whatever it is that whatever your not only your goal, but your intention, whatever that is, as a leader, you have the power to influence that and actually bring that into fruition, whatever that goal or intention might be. So I think I would define it as having the power to influence. And influence is huge. Look at social media now. You got all these quote unquote influencers, right? You know what's funny though, really? So my son, he's, you know, just embarking into adulthood, and I forgot, like, his generation, they don't really watch TV, right? So a lot of their advertising and, you know, how things are being shaped in terms of fashion and, you know, thought and, you know, just ways of being is coming through quote unquote influencers, right?
Yeah.
And so again, to me, that's leadership. Like that's the power to influence.
Yeah. In that case, we can all be micro leaders, right? There's micro influencers, there's
Absolutely.
nano influencers. We can all be
Absolutely.
on our level.
Absolutely.
We don't have to be this leader, this quote unquote leader within this large company or whatever.
Absolutely.
To exhibit leadership.
Absolutely. I think I think Martin Luther King said, everyone can't be famous, but everyone can be great because greatness is defined by leadership and service. So like everyone can serve. Everyone, if they understand leadership, can exemplify it. So it doesn't matter if it's, like you said, if it's a CEO of a company or a great business of your own, down to like, the bar mitzvah at Starbucks. You know what I'm saying? It's, and I think we have done a bad job, we being society, I think, of creating this false narrative like leadership looks only like this. You know what I mean? Like it's like we've created this idea that it's like the corner office or the entrepreneur or the one telling everyone what to do, and like I think we've kind of like taken on that quote unquote definition by what we see, but that's not. I know some people, man, that even like I think from like friends who don't necessarily have these titles that garner like respect off because you're my manager or leader or owner, but they are actually, the people are following them. Like I honestly know business owners now who will sit down and look at who we might have to let go because of quarterly earnings, etc. And we'll take a look at, well, if we let go of this person, their influence is so great, we might have to consider someone else because they are a leader. They don't have necessarily this quote unquote title, but they have a strong influence over the organization, right? So they're leading. That's a leader.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that and I feel like now when there's more people, I think that I've noticed like quiet quitting who are leaving their jobs, right? Yeah. They have influence over their circle, so then they influence other people. It's like, hey, like you can actually do more than just be in a corporate job, and more power to people who want to be in a corporate job and make that impact.
Yeah.
And maybe also do something on the side, right? Or whatever their wishes are, right?
It's a great example.
But like for people who want to leave, you have more options out there, and they have the influence, and the power to. And I think the confidence that comes from, I can make change on this individual. If I'm a manager, for example, like I built up the confidence that I have success, or at least my level of success, my definition of success, doing something. Let me jump on board into that.
Yes.
And so when other people see that, I think it inspires them, and like I think that's the influence that I've seen in my life, and I'm sure it's the same for you.
Absolutely.
And a bunch of other people who are following similar paths.
They're calling it the Great Resignation, right? That's what they're calling this, right? And so to your point, that's a really good example. I mean, it's a great example in terms of leadership because, people have, it's like giving them the idea like, hey, I can do this, right? And so it's kind of like, it's been a huge influence that's trickled down, and now they're calling it the Great Resignation. So that means there's a significant amount of people reconsidering kind of where they are, what they want to do, utilizing their talents, tapping into their creativity, right? Like there's a significant amount of people, enough for society to call it the Great Resignation. So that's a great example of the power of influence and leadership. Yeah.
Are there any other words or concepts that you're redefining for yourself? So, for example, like experience, leadership.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, this is what I believe leadership is, and or something that you've had to like, here's what society believes and here's what I believe, and that's there's a dissonance there, but it's what I truly believe. Someone calls it rules. He calls them bullshit rules.
Okay.
So he just combines them, and like these are the rules that these aren't the natural laws of physics or gravity or stuff like that, but these are rules that we just created and we just kind of follow them, but we don't actually ever take time to think about them. So are there any rules that you've identified for yourself and have broken and lived up to your highest self because of?
Yeah, I think a big one, and I think this is it's not new, but it has been redefined newly for me. And that is when I redefined my definition of success. And I've heard this, shared a lot, but it really hit home for me the last year and a half. Because prior to me stepping out in full-time entrepreneurship and some of the other ventures I'm involved in, my definition of success really was, although I probably wouldn't have vocalized this verbally because I probably had some shame around it, but it wasn't about money for me. That, like, to me, I wouldn't say that because I knew it wasn't that cool to say that, because all of this new age thinking and higher consciousness. But I really did define success by, like, money. Like, how much money do you have? What are your resources? What are your investments like? That's how I defined success. It wasn't until, like, COVID and I started really having and raising my level of consciousness, particularly through Abraham Hicks. I don't know if you're familiar with her or not, but Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, some of these great teachers, that I really started to redefine what success really meant for me. Because I had heard that, many times, like, well, what is success for you? And how do you define success? And I would give this example or definition, but it really wasn't what I really believed, although I knew it was what people wanted to hear. But now, for me, I really define success as true prosperity. And it's not limited to money at all. Money is an aspect of it. So it's good health. It's good quality relationships. It's a sense of love for myself and others. It's an overflowing of joy, right? It's allowing grace to lead and guide me in my life, and also having resources and money, right? But before, it was limited to one thing. And I think where I'm at now, where I think society kind of defined it that way to a degree, I've completely redefined that for me, because I understand what it's like to have, that 6-figure plus salary and have the corner office and, have investments and bring in whatever society is saying. That I've been there, done that. When society said, go get the house, the white picket fence, the dog, the corner office, and at least make 6 figures, I did it, right? And then I exceeded that. So I thought, whoa, this is great, But there still was a search for significance that I had, a hole. I like to call it the God-shaped hole that I think we all have within ourselves, that those things couldn't fill. And I say that knowing and having lived it now. Before, I tell my son too, it's one thing to say things, but you need some wins behind your belt to really understand why I can say what I'm saying now emphatically and understand, because I've had some wins, quote unquote, in terms of I can say that about, the corner office and boom, because I've done it, right? So I think that's part of the journey. I needed that. But now, having done that, I truly understand what success means for me. Because if I don't have good health, right, if I'm not in a place, and that's true prosperity for me, if I'm not in good health, then who cares that I can have this yacht on the Red Sea? It'd be nice, right? But it'd be probably a good place to die, but who cares?
Right.
You know what I mean? If I can have this yacht on the Red Sea, but then I have no one to share it with. I mean, love of friends and family, and like, I don't have that. I don't have this sense of joy and love for myself. Who cares about the money only? That's not success for me anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas one time I did define it that way.
That's big.
Yeah.
I want to dig more into that.
Yeah.
Well, something I like to do is, in the middle of a conversation, a lot of podcasts have rapid fire questions.
Okay.
I'm going to do the opposite of that, which is no talking, and we're just time to integrate. Just time to just take a pause, take a breath.
I love that.
And after the 30 seconds, 1 minute, whatever feels right, I'll invite you to ask me a question.
Okay.
And we'll go from there.
I love that. Okay.
What comes to mind?
What are your daily habits that create a successful, what you would consider a successful day, or a day where you're present, or whatever you would say is a day that by the end of the day you can say, yeah, that was a good day? What are things that you do on a daily basis to create that for yourself?
Yeah, good question. So for me, journaling, writing is definitely one of them.
Okay.
Whether it's emotional, creative, or convergent writing, I think I kind of lump all that under writing. So writing of some sort. So when I mean, so emotional, more of like a diary type of like feelings, emotions, stuff like that. Creative as, okay, I have this one thought, there's one point of inspiration that I have, and how can I diverge? How can I create as many branches as I can from this one single point to then either connect those dots or continue asking more questions, so it continues proliferating.
I like that.
It's almost like a tree.
Yeah.
And then convergent, which is, okay, now I have all these thoughts that are out there. Now the process of either convergent or integration, which is, okay, now how do I process the experience that I just had? How do I then bring in these potential sources of inspiration and these ideas? How do I then translate that into action? How do I then, if I read a book, if I don't implement anything from it, or if my mindset doesn't change or anything, whether now or in the future, then I've essentially just wasted my time. That's the way that I view it. It's like there's got to be something that I take away from it that, okay, I don't have to necessarily do, at least from my perspective, is I don't need to do it, immediately. But if it's on my task backlog, or if it's like, hey, here's a future project that I want to think about pursuing, something that is creative in its most purest sense, that comes out of something. So those three types of writing is definitely an important part of my day. Some sort of physical fitness aspect. I've leaned more into improving my mobility. I think I've taken that for granted, and as I get older, not that I'm like old, but as the years progress, I think I'm gonna be more grateful.
For sure.
I'm gonna become increasingly grateful for the time I spend now doing things like stretching or doing yoga or things that stretch out my body and increase my mobility. And I think that has a lot of obviously physical benefits, but also mental and emotional benefits as well. Where if I'm stretching my body, then I think it's a metaphor for our mind. We can stretch our minds a little bit easier as well. So mobility, strength, that's something that I've done a lot of cardio. But I want to do more strength-based type of stuff, and just and I have felt that when not that I can bench 300 pounds or anything, right? But it's when I am in the process of increasing my strength, I feel more confident in myself throughout the day.
Agree.
And it's an amazing feeling. And it's not necessarily one that I've had through that process before. And so when I'm spending just 10 minutes a day, so for example, I've started doing a habit challenge for myself every month. So started this in May, June. So like in July, for example, one of my habits that I wanted to create was having a strength routine. And it was just like, it was doing 50 push-ups a day.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't sound like much.
Yeah.
But for me, it was something to create the habit of something for my upper body strength.
Yes. Yeah.
And, I timed myself like, hey, here's when I started the month. Here's how long it took me to do 50 push-ups. And at the end of the month, here's how long it took. And, it was reduced by almost like 40%. So like just within that 1 month time frame, just doing things consistently, that was proof that consistency matters almost more than anything else. And so to answer your question, but physical fitness, writing, and then some sort of spiritual practice. So whether it's a little bit of meditation, I consider Tai Chi a spiritual practice. Yeah. So I practice that on a multi-week or multiple times a week basis. And I think connecting with people. I don't think that's necessarily seen as a habit. But for me, I would consider myself an introvert. Yeah. Where I get energy when I'm by myself. Okay. And I still definitely do that and resonate with that. And I also get energy when I'm talking to people about things that I want to talk about. Yeah. And hopefully they want to talk about them too. So. Yeah. But I had never really viewed connecting with people as a habit. Where now I would always, I think in the past, either segment that out separately from my daily practices, where it's like, okay, I'm going to spend some time to set aside time to network or set aside time to do this. Whereas I've seen it more just integrated into my daily life now, where I don't need to set aside time to do it. I'm just doing it practically and doing it within the flow of the day where it feels natural. If I'm walking for 15 minutes, 10 of those minutes, I may be hitting up people on text because I find that if I don't do that, then I'll want to schedule time out for it. But then I feel like, okay, I want to be more productive than just texting people. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, now I can knock out 2 for 1. I can clear my mind a little bit. Yeah. Have some little bit of physical exercise or at least physical movement, and then also hit up people. Yeah. And then, then my calendar's filled up, and then I don't have to think about, oh, I need to hit up this person. Right. I want to talk to this person this upcoming week. Yeah. So that was a long-winded answer but those are some of the practices that I practice and try to embody on a daily, weekly basis. Yeah.
Have you always, or maybe not always, but have you found that this journey that you're on now, like this more enlightened, conscious, centered things, that you prioritize in your life now, do you feel you've always had a bend toward that, or was it something that kind of happened in your life that kind of redirected your trajectory or your journey a little bit?
Yeah, so I think the foundation was always there. Okay. I grew up in a multi-faith organization. Okay. Grew up Hindu and then grew up also in that multi-faith, interfaith organization where it set a strong foundation for believing in all religions, believing in all faiths, and accepting all of them and celebrating all of them. And so that kind of set the foundation for that. And like the main 2 pillars of that are love and service. And so it's like love all, serve all. And so that set the foundation for believing in higher powers, believing in ourselves as God, as higher powers ourselves. Yeah. And then I took a few courses, day-long workshops, weekend-long workshops, some of whom talked about people like, Hay or Hicks, and other, psychologists, other people who believe in manifestation, stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. Where it just became more and more part of my life. And so, but that didn't happen until after, 2019. Okay. So 2019 onwards, and then COVID really pressed a supercharge to it, where I felt lean more into my journaling and into my writing abilities and proclivities. And so that's when I really started doing those practices. Yeah, because I was definitely not thinking about this stuff like in college.
Right.
I was in a fraternity. I was like partying every
Okay,
weekend.
yeah.
I don't think my parents want to know how much I was drinking. Right, but it's so like it's someone who met me in college versus someone who met me now. Like if they re-met me again now, we're a vastly different person. And I'm sure, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt as well. Right? People who I was partying with then may have, or may almost, probably will have made some sort of transformation in their lives. Too.
Yeah. Do you think it's helped you in business?
100%.
Okay.
Right. It's like
also
just really leaning into, again, the intuition, really leaning into feelings and experiences as the guiding force for doing something, rather than just the numbers, rather than just, here's my step-by-step plan to do something. Like, even in the context of a startup where I was at for the last 3-4 years, the way that I would sometimes come up with ideas and like the plans for the next quarterly, or quarterly strategies, right? I would just do some meditation at work, kind of in my own cubicle area, and just come up with those ideas, start typing. So I'd have the keyboard in front of me, like I was doing work, which I was,
right.
but my eyes were closed, and I was kind of got into a deeper state, and I just kind of typed out whatever flowed out, and that was part of my ideation process. One-on-one meetings, I definitely leaned more into being more of the empathetic side of me, which I naturally didn't have or didn't practice growing up with. So really allowing space for people to express themselves emotionally. It's not just like, it's not just a progress report when you have one-on-one meetings, especially if with your manager or when you're the manager for someone. It's not just like, hey, what'd you do? What's your plan next, right? It's not like, no one wants to be treated like that. I think it goes deeper. It's like, hey, like, how is life going? And I had that relationship with my manager for 2.5 years when we had that formal relationship. And I liked that, and I wanted to carry that on for anyone that I was managing as well. For hopefully, people feel safe enough to open up about things that are going on in their personal lives. Not that they have to, but if they want to, the space is created. So I think those two things come to mind. Is there anything in, I guess, have you seen that relationship on a one-on-one level with people?
Based on my practices, or just
right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think, as you said, 100%. For sure, one thing that I've learned, I say this every time I'm either interviewed or anyone asks me for like a piece of advice or something like that. I say this to everyone, so I'm going to say it here as well. But one thing I learned, I never forget. I was fresh out of college, and it was like my first, quote unquote, real job. And there was this older gentleman there, by the name of Joaquin, and he's passed away, so that's why I said I would like to honor him for this. But he was one of the smartest people I had met to date at that time. And he just kind of like felt like he was kind of like going to take me under his wing and how to help groom me, etc. And so we were one day I was sharing with him. I was a young father at the time. I had just gotten married, all those life changes. I've got a real job now. Like, adulting sucks. I thought, like, why was I rushing for this? I had that moment. I was going through that transition. And I was just telling him, and so while I'm talking, like, you and I are here, he's just listening, observing, right? But I felt kind of like, are you listening? Do you hear me? Because he wasn't really giving me any like affirmation or like, yes. Or so finally I said, well, hey, I said, do you hear what I'm saying though? Do you understand? He said, I know exactly what you're saying. I said, you sure? He said, yeah. He said, I'm listening for what you're not saying. And he said, I hear you loud and clear, but it's not by what you're saying. And he taught me the art of listening for what people are not saying. There's an art and a science to it. And so that skill set I've actually, not only, but it's heightened when your center is grounded and all those practices you say, like the meditation and the physical exercise and eating right and all that kind of thing. It's like the channel's very clear. And so in business, I would always be able to apply that. So I'm listening for what you're saying verbally, but I'm also getting a lot of nonverbal cues that are giving me a lot of insight. That what I've learned is that most people, I would venture to say, are not going to verbally tell you everything you need to know. I'll say that again. Most people are not going to tell you verbally everything you need to know, either about them or the experience or the situation. And so in business, that has helped me tremendously. It's helped me save money. It's helped me get out of bad partnerships. It's helped me make decisions that, at the time I was being led by intuition, what I could hear and see by conversation. But then times later, I'd say, that was for a reason. Okay. And it started to build that muscle, so I would trust it more. But to answer your question, I think that concept, coupled with like the grounding and the spiritual practice and the meditation and, the physical fitness and that kind of thing. And from a business perspective, I certainly rely on that now, and I'm not going with the idea that I'm trying to impose or pull something out of someone that's not there. I don't go with that. Like, I'm not trying to be a seer, or I'm not trying to be like this, this prophet from, from the heavens or anything like. I'm just showing up as myself, tuned into who I know I am and whose I am. And I've learned from a business perspective that has really helped me to not only make some really great decisions and some bad ones, but learn from them, but also be able to forge some relationships as a result of that have helped me to do and start other things. Like one of the businesses that I have now, it's as a result of a connection, like you said, of meeting someone and joining partnership and helping. They already founded, but I became kind of co-founder in terms of kind of what I brought to it, but they already had the foundation of it set. But again, that was as a result of making connections, listening to what people were not saying, to be able to connect with certain people and make certain decisions that brought these situations kind of to me, if you will. But yeah, it's something that now I absolutely would not want to do business without. And I wish some of this was taught. Like, I don't know how you would. I need like a class that, like this, the art of listening for people who are not saying 101 or something like. But it's been so invaluable in my personal relationships, romantic relationships, and business relationships that I absolutely would not want to do it without it.
That's big.
It's huge.
I feel like you can put that under the umbrella of effective communication.
Absolutely.
Or leadership communication.
Yeah.
Right. I recently did. So I know a person who is in the process of writing a book, and he reached out on LinkedIn. He was also actually on the podcast last year.
Okay.
But he's like a manifestation coach, and business coach and life coach for a lot of people. And so he was doing this experiment where he's run it with his clients, but then he reached out via LinkedIn for the general public. Hey, I'm running this experiment on how to shut up.
Really?
I love it. In so many words. So the challenge was, can you put yourself in positions, or not even put yourself, like when you're in positions where you feel like you want to talk, can you not talk? And how does that feel? and especially with family and people you're around more often and spend more time around, how does that change you? How does that change them? And so the experiment was to do it for 10 to 14 days or so.
I love that.
And I found myself, and so like we had a debrief call last week.
Okay, this is recent.
Yeah, so this is, yeah. So
nice.
when I went back home to Kansas City like a month ago, that was the time that I decided to do it. So it was right after I left my job.
Okay.
And I went back home to Kansas City.
Yeah.
And, did this challenge and learned a lot through silence.
So what's the like rules, or like how, you know what I'm saying? Is it like what's the rules to the game, or the challenge, if you will?
Yeah, it was just kind of it's like go through your normal day, and whenever you feel like talking,
don't.
Right, yeah, and just listen to your body. How does that feel within you, and then pay attention to the other people. Like how does that affect who they are? Like at the beginning when you start doing this, and then at the end, right? Is there any change of how I felt? Like, so for example, I had an experience where, I got a little, heated, a little angry at my mom, while I was driving, and it was like, there's some tension there.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I remained silent, which, I was only doing for the sake of the experiment.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would have,
right. Yeah.
said I'm sorry, or said, whatever else.
Yeah.
But I was like, hey, like, what happens if I remain silent now?
Okay.
It did not go well.
Okay.
I mean, it was just more like, I think what I learned from that is the after like some sort of tension or experience of tension or some sort of negative thing from one side or the other, it's almost better to actually talk it out and communicate verbally rather than giving someone the silent treatment, right? Especially if they value verbal communication, then talk about it, right? But like anyway, so at the end of that call, we were talking, during the debrief, and we bounced around a bunch of ideas, and we were like, yeah, I think one of the big takeaways on my end was how silence is an important part of effective communication. And that's something that I had kind of known, to your point earlier about things that we kind of know are true, but we haven't really experienced it. But this experiment and having those experiences really allowed me to embody, like, oh, what does it actually feel like? What is my experience in relation to how silence is part of effective communication? Or so I got a counterexample to that. But I think those resonate just as equally, if not more.
I love that.
And so, yeah.
I think I've been inspired to challenge myself. This is what I get. That's why I was asking for the rules. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this one.
I have the doc. I can send you over the LinkedIn and the document or whatnot to see the full, how he structured it.
Please do. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Because there is a lot of, I've noticed too, that there's a lot that's said in the silence. Even if you think about, just like you said, meditation or journaling, or, there's a lot that's maybe not said, but there's a lot that's experienced and felt in the silence. So I'm curious, that piqued my interest. And like, I think that's a good challenge to do. Yeah.
Are there any, I guess similar, going off there, are there any counter examples to things that you've experienced that then have led you to really embody and imbibe a lesson?
A valuable lesson? Yeah, there's been so many. I got to think of a good one.
I guess so for me, it's almost like having I feel like we learn, there's the opportunity to learn from so many lessons around us in our daily life.
Absolutely.
That sometimes we don't take the time to process and integrate those things, where those lessons are there to be found, but we don't actually discover them because we don't take the time. Right? So I'm curious to hear if, when you've taken the time to see those things that are not said, things that are not done perhaps, that, this is a lesson that I learned because I did something opposite to that.
I think one practical experience or example I have, or both, was with my son. When he started out playing baseball, then he went to basketball, and was really, really good. So he started out in freshman year and on varsity, and then his course of direction kind of changed. But up until then, his mom and I were just, all our weekends were consumed with basketball and AAU and one thing or another centered around basketball. And so, as passionate parents and dad, we'd always, of course, we're rooting for him and the team and the coaches, and so we always had a lot of feedback. We'll just say that, right? And so this particular game, he didn't do quote unquote so well, and so we get in the car, and I'm kind of going through my whole rant, if you will, about driving and being in the pain, and his defense wasn't as where it needs to be, and he has to work on his left hand, all this stuff. And he sat there and he listened. He was quiet, although I'm sure he wanted to say some things. And he said to me and his mom, he said, "But you all are not out there." Right? And as simple as that statement was, what I learned from that moment was it's so easy to critique from the stance of life, right? There's always so many critics, but who's out there on the field or actually playing the game? I look at football fans who are fanatics, and they will go ham or crazy about their favorite team or whatever, about all the things that they could do wrong or they've done wrong or could do differently. But could one of you all get hit like that and survive? Right? Could one of you do you know what it feels like to be tackled and to tackle? You have no clue. But we have all of this critique. And so when my son said that, I found myself like, wow, it just hit me kind of, it's a really good point. And how can I apply this in my everyday life as well, right? Not only being the critic, but being criticized. And so that kind of helped me with my journey with social media, because I learned that there's a lot of critics when it comes to social media as well, and posting and creating content and trying to monetize your business and things like that. There's a lot of critique. And just that simple, moment with my son helped me even in business and creating content and thinking there's going to be a lot of critics, right? Brene Brown says, it's not the critic, well, she quotes Theodore Roosevelt, says, it's not the critic who counts, but it's actually the person who's out there on the field getting their ass beat through blood, sweat, and tears, right? That they're daring greatly. They're out there doing it. It's easy to stand on the sidelines and say, well, why didn't you drive, son? Why didn't you do, so-and-so? You need to work on this, So practically, I try to apply that now to my own life and to others, and keeping in my memory bank that being vulnerable and exposing yourself, starting a business, showing up every day just in life is going to entail some critique. But also know that I'm less concerned about your critique unless you're out here on the field with me. If you're out here with, getting bruised and battered and out here, doing it as well, I more so welcome your critique. If you're not, thanks, but no thanks. Because you don't understand what it's like to be out here. So the perspective that you're going to have and the feedback that you're going to have is going to be totally different than someone who's not in the game of life. Showing up every day, being vulnerable, doing the things like this that we're doing today, etc. If you're not showing up for life in that way, then your critique is not that valuable to me. So I learned that from him.
That's big.
It was huge for me.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. As we wrap up here, I think it's starting to rain as well.
Yeah.
Anything that you would like to share or plug? I know you know, like the podcast, like you said.
Yeah.
Anything else that that you want anyone who's listening and watching to?
Sure. So I have a podcast with Charlene Ridley called Winning the Day. And it's on YouTube. Will be posted on YouTube. And we also do Clubhouse as well on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Starting to revamp that. We took a break, but through some personal issues. But we'll be revamping that. It's called Winning the Day. I have a merchandise line called the New Meaning brand. So you can go to either on IG, the New Meaning brand, or if you want to go on to our website, it's www.thenewmeaningbrand.com. But we do a lot of like apparel that helps to redefine what you think you know. So we just kind of use words and phrases and give them new meaning. And then I also have a payroll business that's called My Right Hand Business Solutions. So not only payroll, but we do project management consulting. And so it really would like to come as an extension to your business, your right hand, with various different services that we provide. But that's also at My Right Hand Business Solutions. So that's about it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah. I'll include those all in the show notes as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the time, Alfonso. This has been amazing.
It's been great. Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, definitely got to come back
to
this spot. And if I live in Atlanta again, we might have to get a membership.
I think they have one in 2 other states as well. So maybe,
do they?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was my next question. I was going to ask them. So.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Answer that for me. Well, appreciate the time. This has been awesome.
It's my pleasure.
And hope everyone who was listening and watching also had a great time on the Casually Profound Series on the Size Eyes podcast.
Absolutely.
See you next time.